Hello again, this is Greg with MVC-Tutorial 2 or 1.1 depending on how you want to look at it. I know the last MVC application, or in the last MVC tutorial we went through more view stuff than we did applications, or actually coding, I'm sorry, not applications but actually coding. So some might look at this as 1.2 and kind of look at it but as 1.1 or 2.0. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, does it? So anyway, if you haven't made a project before, I already have a project built already. But if you haven't made one in MVC before, you go File, New, Project, ASP.NET MVC3. You can set all your name, your solution name if you want to change it to something else, and your actual path. And then you would click OK. And then you have these two options: Internet application, intranet application. I would go with internet application. Most of the applications I've written are using the internet, even if they were for an intranet. The intranet kind of tries to help you a little bit too much and give you too much security and too much stuff pre-built. I don't mind a lot of security, but I like it when I actually wrote the security for it or I decided what to do. So there's goods and there's bads to it, but I usually stick with this one. I don't do empty because it really is bare bones, and then you've got to add repository or references, and it's just not even worth it. The engine that I use is Razor. ASPX is another one where they're very similar. Razor is kind of just cleaner. You basically just use an @ sign for most things, whereas ASPX you have to use bracket percent colon or bracket percent to put in model information or actual business logic. Wherever you don't want straight up HTML into your view. So I try to not use that anymore, and also I've heard through the grapevine that Razor is going to be the standard in MVC 5. So just to give you a heads up there. If you're planning on doing TDD or test-driven development or any kind of other unit testing, you can check this off. I haven't been. Have not been a good boy as far as that's concerned. Probably should get used to that more. And then once you click OK, it'll open up it'll create the project for you. But I'm going to open mine up, and let's see here. If we go to projects, MVC tutorials. Okay, here's my tutorial. Okay, so this is what you'll start with. Your content pretty much holds any CSS that you have from a high level. In certain situations, I will make a content folder for each area, and I'll go over areas in a different tutorial. It depends on how many applications you're going to have within your web application. From what I've noticed, really, people, although it would be nice to make new web applications for each one of your applications within your internet or intranet site, because then you can publish each one separately. As nice as that is, they have not made that very simple, because like if you have a site master, for instance, or a Razor a layout, you are unable to have one without making virtual directories and go through a lot of hoops. So if you have one site master, that you want to propagate through all of them, you have to keep a separate one for each one, and then that means more maintaining, more updating every time you want a new thing. And if you're like me and you've built a lot of web applications, I put that in big air quotes, even though you can't see me. Applications inside of your web application project. If you were to separate all of those out, you're going to have like 20 site masters or layouts, and it's going to defeat the purpose of the layout at that point, to some degree anyway. So I digress from that. So anyway, so the other thing you'll notice here is there is some themes. I haven't dealt with that too much, but it holds all your jQuery stuff. This gets updated depending on the the version you're on, and what this is Visual Studio 2012. If you're using 2010, then you might have different jQueries here. It's not that big of a deal because we're not going to go over jQuery all that much, so it shouldn't be a big issue. But I'm just kind of going through each folder so you understand what things are. And what you would do is you would reference these when needed. I usually recommend, in fact, I had a fellow ask me today about this. Is it you just add, your CSS or your JavaScript to each view? And my answer was absolutely not. Because what you want to do is anything that you use, all the time, you would add that to your site master. If there are things that you find, like I see that there's this UI.date picker, okay, CSS, and let me see, do they have the JS in here? It must be probably in your minified here, CSS. No, I don't even see it in here, but they have it somewhere. Oh, you know what? It's probably under. I know what it's under. It's under scripts. There's a scripts folder here. Here's all your jQuery stuff. Okay. So the other stuff was CSS, which is something completely different. I'm going to go over that. That's basically how you design your view from a pretty standpoint, not a coding standpoint, which I'm not good at. So we won't go over that. So what I was getting at was if you have something like the jQuery unobtrusive Ajax, okay, and you don't use that in all your applications, you do not want to put that in your site master. Because then, even though it's minified, like this one is what you should use, the minified one, you are still having to download that for every single page. So only add this, be cautious of when you add things. There's no need to add it to every single page unless you need it. And then also keep in mind that if you do put it in the site master, if you access it, if you try to put it into another view, it won't work because jQuery silently pukes if you have two versions of it being added to the view, being included into the view or into the site master. So even if you have it in two places, but it's in the site master and it's in the view, it's still going to break. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these. So now I showed you the content and the scripts file. There's a view folder. What you'll notice here is it's got an account folder. That's one of your first MVC objects, kind of, if you look at it that way. And it's got these login, change password, register. These HCHTMLs. These are your views. These are what the views will look like. Okay. Now those views are all tied to an action. What is an action? Well, an action is inside of a controller. What happens when somebody does a get or somebody does a post, okay, from your view? What does it call? Well, it calls the action that has the same exact name as the view. So you'll notice that this action here, it's returning a result action, and it's a post. It's got the data attribute of a post. That means that when somebody uses the logon view, which is right here, and this is you see this begins submit form, okay? So when this stuff gets submitted, it's going to call the account controller and say, hey, account controller, do you have a logon action? Oh, yes, I do. And by the way, it's also a post, so lucky me. Because you'll notice that there's two logons here, right? Well, here's the difference. This one, by default, okay, anything that doesn't have a data annotation or a metadata on top of the method is by default a get. Okay, so that's why with nothing here, it's going to be a get. So when you call logon, the view, it calls this, you return the view, and the view is that CSHTML. I don't know why they couldn't come up with a better name. That's really hard to say over and over again. And then upon post, it's going to say, oh, okay, you mean this one. And then it's going to go through all the process, and then when it's done, it'll return the view. And if you want to, you can stuff a model into the view, and it'll know how to handle that on the view side. So that's the lowdown of basically what happens. What I had wanted to do was get rid of a lot of this stuff because it's kind of confusing when you have too many things going on and too much quote-unquote stuff, I guess would be the best way to look at it. So I'm going to kind of kill most of this. I'm going to keep the controllers. Oops. Let's close this, because this is going over already at 10 minutes, so I don't want to waste too much more time. So what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to make a model. Okay, we'll kill this model too. Let's just kill everything. That's what I usually start with. Okay, so the first thing I do with my models is I make a view model, view models folder, a data models folder, and we'll go over them in detail as they arise, and a repositories folder. Okay, now if you will notice, if I bring up my handy dandy Visio here, we just went over the controller and the view. Okay, and what I just made was a folder for the repository, the view models, and everything else gets created. The view gets the folders for the view gets created on the fly when you create the view, which I will go over at some point in the future. And the servicer I keep in the converter, I keep in the data model, kind of because that's what it's gonna kind of play with and what it's gonna be passing back and forth. So that's where that stays. It could kind of go in the repository, but not really. So the first thing I wanted to do in this one, this is building views, is a tutorial. So I wanted to build a view, right? So let's do add controller, and we're going to call this, let's see, let's call it awesomeness controller. Oops, if I could spell, that'd be great. Awesomeness controller, right? Alright, so we add awesomeness controller. Now the first thing it does is it makes this index action. You can keep this, you don't have to, depends on what you want to do. I like to keep it most of the time because then it at least gives you an entry point if somebody just goes to awesomeness and they don't go to awesomeness / whatever. At least this gives you an entry point to get to, so that they don't get an error or an exception or a 404, file not found or something like that. So now the next thing we're going to do to create a view is going to do add view. It's that simple. Okay, we have no models right now to create strongly typed, so that's fine, we can do it later. And then we do have a master page that comes with it. It's called layout.cshtml, and it's in your views shared folder. And click OK to log that in, and then we'll click add. Okay, and there's your view. This right here, this just tells it, okay, if I have a view, if you wanted to give it view bag information, you could make it the title. What this basically will do is it will make that the title. And then the layout is the layout file that I just selected, and what that's going to do is basically, it's, if you're used to Site Master, that's what a layout is. Why they named it something different, I have no idea. They could have just changed the file name or the extension name, but they changed the whole file name. So in any event, then they just give you an H2 somewhere to start. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is let's just make a div. Oops, div. Okay, nobody laughing at that I put DIC instead of div8. It's not funny. And we'll just do hello from the index. And I know we're doing something very simple. I'm sure everybody understands this HTML. Now you may be wondering why there's no HTML, the body, the header. That is because if you go to shared right here in the layout.cs HTML, this is your whole body. Okay, this is the whole body. So what it does is where this render body is, it's inside this div ID main tag, which you can change any of this stuff, and then it allows you, it will fill this in right here. Alright, so let's test it out. Let's not believe me, let's run it. Of course it always runs on my other screen. Alright, so let's see. Awesomeness. There you go. Alright, so awesomeness, and I didn't have to put slash index or anything, it just went there. And there you go, hello from the index. So that concludes this tutorial. Since it's almost 15 minutes, let's just wait 2 seconds. Okay, now it's 15 minutes. Have a good day, and you'll hear from me soon.